So you can keep your slide presentation.
So you want me to share this?
Yes, sir. I should. Yes.
Can you see
Good
that?
evening, everyone. Yes, sir. So can I start, sir?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to IISC webinar series on life theme. So IISC conducts series of webinars under the life theme. So life is a India-led global mass movement to protect the environment, and which is initiated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji on 1st November 2021 at Glasgow. So life is a mass movement to protect and preserve the environment. So it also ensures that individuals practice the lifestyle which synchronous with nature, as well as which does not harm the environment. So in this today we have with us Dr. Ritesh Kumar from Wetland International, who is heading as a director of Wetland International South Asia. So he's going to discuss about wise use of wetlands and mission life. So Dr. Ritesh has research interest including institutions and governance and integrated management of wetlands, ecosystem services and valuation. Over the past 2 decades, Dr. Kumar has led integrated management planning for the several South Asian wetlands. He is also involved in several global and regional and national assessments. So he is being the lead author for the Global Wetlands Outlook 2018. And also a coordinating lead author for the IPBES regional assessment on status of biodiversity ecosystem services for Asia and Pacific. So, and also he's provided various methods for assessment of multiple values of the nature. So Dr. Kumar has closely associated with the Ramsar Convention. So he's also expert member for the Convention of Scientific and Technical Review Panel for three times, and he has worked on various themes including wetland and poverty reduction, ecosystem services, disaster and risk reduction, health, agriculture, tourism, and other aspects. He is also associated editor for marine and freshwater research, which is published under PLOS Water. So his well-known research is on ecosystem services of Chilka Lake, and also the dam development value for both wetland and hydropower, which received the lot of appreciation across the globe. So I wholeheartedly welcome you, sir, on behalf of IISC at University of Science. So I request you to share your vast knowledge on wetlands and also the importance of the Ramsar Convention to the audience. So in the end, we will have a discussion with the participants also, sir.
Thank you, Bharat. Thank you, Bharat, for this opportunity to be on this very important webinar series on wetland conservation and mission life. So before we launch into the webinar, I would like to clarify there is a lot of confusion around the term wetlands. And it is important to get our terminologies right before we venture into the wise use and mission life dimensions. So firstly, the idea of wetlands, when it evolved, it was that of a transitional ecosystem. So that was part of the landscape that was dominated by land, which is terrestrial. Dry hydrology, water was present on the margins. And there were deep water aquatic ecosystems where water was the dominant feature of the ecosystem and a key controller of the ecosystem processes. And wetlands were something in between. So which had characteristics of land and which had characteristics of water. So that was the definition, ecological definition as it came. But then over a period of time, this definition has been applied to become more inclusive. For example, in India, we have used the terms water body, reservoirs, lakes, waterlogged area. In Assam and Northeast, we call them beels, mangroves, marsh, aquaculture farms. So this whole idea of transitional ecosystem has been slightly broadened. And the most important point in time, so often you will get news like 5 water bodies in Puducherry to get wetland status soon. So this is another kind of confusion that has been prevailing, that there are water bodies and wetlands are nothing but a special kind of water body. So to clear this confusion, let us all understand the mother of all definitions comes from Ramsar Convention. This is an international treaty signed by 172 countries. India is also a member, and which is a more broad definition of of wetlands. Areas of marsh, fen, peatlands or water, whether natural or artificial, permanent or temporary, with water that is static or flowing, fresh, brackish or salt, including areas of marine water, the depth of which at low tide does not exceed 6 meters. Now you will see that this definition is more than that of an ecotonic definition or definition of wetlands as an ecotone. It refers to all areas which are holding water in the landscape, and these could be lakes and rivers, underground aquifers, swamps and marshes, wet grasslands, peatlands, oases in the deserts, estuaries, deltas and tidal flats, mangroves, coral reefs, and even human-made sites. So what is most important thing to remember? That this definition encompasses all forms of, aquatic ecosystems barring the sea and the ocean. And thus, when you refer to a system as water body, you are actually talking to one small type of wetland. So all water bodies are essentially wetlands, but wetlands are not just bodies of water. These are living ecosystems. These are bodies of plants, animals, human histories, and whatnot. So when we talk about a wetland as a water body, we are actually referring to one of the several features that a wetland has, which is presence and absence of water, or a hydrological cycle wherein water at times is permanently present or seasonally present. So let's clear those definitions. All water bodies by their nature are wetlands, but wetlands are not just water bodies. They are far more than water bodies. And in a landscape, you can see wetlands everywhere, right from human, high altitude lakes, which are locked up in the Himalayas, to the reservoirs that were built all across high altitude systems to hold water, to lakes, to river floodplains, the margins of the rivers, oxbows, these are special kinds of riverine wetlands, marshes which are dominated by plants, swamps which are dominated by trees, estuaries and coral reefs. So all across the landscape. So let us look at water as being present in two forms, at least, physical water. And one water that is flowing, which is acting as a conduit of transfer of water, sediment, minerals, energies, nutrients from one point to the other point. This is relatively fast and flowing water, which is available in rivers. And wetlands are where water slows down. Typically, I personally isolate rivers from wetlands, and different countries have also adopted this position. Although certain, in India, we have also designated parts of rivers as Ramsar sites. So I'll come to that later. But wetlands are where water slows down. And by the very act of slowing down, the wonders of wetlands start, appearing. For example, when water slows down, it starts depositing sediments. The plants, they start absorbing nutrients and then, heavy metals, and it starts cleaning water. And then when water slows down, it also starts recharging, groundwater recharge, water is being stored, and then we can access this water in different forms. Different species, life forms, they find this water a very critical part of their life cycle, and their dependence is closely associated with this ecosystem. So wetland has, by the very name, has two parts, wet and land. Most of the wetlands have a wet cycle when they have lots of water, and then a dry cycle when they will be dry. And it is at that moment wherein people feel that it is just an empty piece of land, and why bother? Why not convert it to this alternate land use, such as agriculture, something that is useful for humankind? And that is where wetlands are being converted or being used for different purposes, and the ecosystem is lost. And I'll show you in the subsequent slides that this appreciation of lack of appreciation of this hydrological cycle of the wetland is what creates a lot of policy challenges, programmatic challenges in a landscape. So how much wetland do we have? So since 1970s, when even before ministry was created and there was a Department of Science, there were efforts being made to understand how much wetlands do we have in this country, and surveys were being conducted. In 1989, my organization, my predecessor organization, Asian Waterbird Bureau, joined hands with IUCN at WWF to create the first inventory of wetlands, and we recorded roughly 58.9 million hectares. But in those days, we were also including rice paddies. About 40.9 million was under rice paddies, and about 18 million hectares in 1989. Now with space application technologies, with Earth observation, it is becoming far more easier to cover large areas. And the most recent atlas of wetlands that has been produced by Space Application Center mentions this area to be 15.86 million hectares, roughly 4.7% of the country's geographic area. If you want to have numbers, roughly the country has 7.7 lakh wetlands, 5.5 lakh of which are small wetlands, which is in less than 2.25 hectares. So when you say like this 2.25 hectares, this was the minimum resolution of the satellite data that was being used to map wetlands. So beyond 2.25 hectares, there are polygons available, and below 2.25 hectares, there are point estimates available, assuming that each of these points is of 1 hectare each. In terms of states, state of Gujarat has maximum wetland area, and particularly you can see this dark blue, the run of Kutch, the famous run. The salt desert is one of the biggest wetlands in the country. 3/4 of our wetlands are inland, 1/4 are coastal. But for various reasons, we believe that this estimate of wetlands is likely to be an underestimate. Because the remote sensing technologies cannot classify properly several types of wetlands. For example, our knowledge of peatlands in this country is very patchy. These peatlands are high carbon storing systems. They look like highly vegetated wetlands, but they are moist, and they lock huge amounts of carbon. Globally, they are one of the most efficient terrestrial carbon stores. So the limitations of optical technology means that such wetlands cannot be delineated just by Earth observation. They need detailed field surveys, and thereby, I always take this 15.86 million hectares to be an underestimate, and these numbers are likely to be much higher when a systematic wetland definition and a multidisciplinary approach to wetland inventory is adopted. So why do we say their criticality? First of all, let's look at their water storage and supply functions. So it is estimated that nearly 14% of utilizable groundwater that the country has is made available by river floodplains and other wetlands. If I look at surface area alone, nearly 6% of utilizable surface water 43 billion cubic meters is accounted for by wetlands. If I look at food security functions, nearly 6% of country's population, 85 million people directly depend on wetlands for their livelihoods. These could be in the form of fish, rice, foxnut, clams, salt tourism, and more. These are again, lower ends of the estimates, but these are also highly efficient buffers against extreme events. And time and again, it is proven that landscapes which conserve wetlands, they are able to absorb extreme events much better and they are more resilient. Cultural linkages, our existence, history, civilization has all evolved around wetlands. These are rightly called the cradles of civilization. Several societies still have customs and rituals which are related to wetlands, but they are also habitat for numerous life forms. It is not just about humans. 40% of fauna and 43% of flora at a bare minimum are dependent on wetlands. They use wetlands as habitats. 64% fish, 28% reptile, 42% birds, 100% amphibians, they depend on wetlands. And most significant of these are the migratory species, the migratory water birds that use the Central Asian flyway to escape the harsh temperate winters. They come to our wetlands, and 250 of the known 870 species of migratory water birds use this flyway. Now, when I look at, we are also having the climate change discussions, the UNFCCC COP is underway. Indian wetlands may store something up to 10 gigatons of CO2 equivalent of carbon, which is roughly 4 times of India's annual emission. And in several parts, the wetlands carbon storage is far more efficient than that of tropical forest. So this makes, with just occupying around 4 or 5% of the India's land area, so much of benefits is being provided. These ecosystems demand a systematic conservation attention and conservation action. Yet, we track a wetlands area for over 600 wetlands in the country, and we believe that wetlands have been declining. The decline, so we use something called a wetland trend index. The lower one talks about the natural wetlands, and the upper trend index is of the human-made wetlands, the reservoir and tanks. And I present this data for 1980 to 2015, and you will see that we have lost about 20% of our natural wetlands. We are creating more wetlands. For example, when we impound water through the reservoirs, barrages, or even water harvesting structures, we create wetlands. But obviously, when we create new ecosystems, the loss of natural ecosystems cannot be compensated. But it is not just the area of the wetlands, their quality is also of concern. For example, the data from National Water Management Portal of CPCB shows that 40% of wetlands have DO unsuitable for propagation of wildlife and fisheries. And if I look at data of another global set on the water permanence, over 40% of our wetlands have become seasonal or ephemeral in the last 30 years. Remember, our popular narrative around wetlands is built around their wet cycle. So we talk of water birds which come to the wetlands in the winters. The society yet does not appreciate the dry part of the hydrological cycle, and our wetlands are increasingly having lots of water, but this water is confined in a shorter period, and they are becoming dry for prolonged periods, especially in the inland systems. And that is where much of the pressure from land use change comes into these systems. And the outcome is societies are becoming vulnerable. For example, half of the country faces high water stress. 1 in 5 water birds for which we have confirmed population status, they are globally threatened. Floods can be devastating. In Bangalore, where Indian Institute of Science is situated, August 2022 floods costed Bangalore 225 crores on a single day. If you look at the cost that the society incurs on management of aquatic and semi-aquatic invasives, nothing less than $9 billion were incurred in damages to aquatic and semi-aquatic invasives. And when wetlands are polluted, obviously they are emitting more and more methane, which adds to the pressure on climate change. So wetland degradation is not great news for the society. Now, internationally, since Ramsar Convention and since 70s, we have had high policy attention to wetlands. For example, recently in CBD, the Global Biodiversity Framework was adopted. Targets 2 and 3 talk about 30 by 30 commitment, includes restoration of inland waters. The Convention on Migratory Species talks about protection of migratory species, including wetland-dependent species. India's presidency talked about of G20 talked about integrated planning and sustainable management of water resources, including wetlands at basin level. United Nations Environment Programme has adopted a resolution of sustainable lake management. Interestingly, other sectors are also recognizing the value of water. The Hyogo framework for disaster risk reduction encourages the role of ecosystems such as wetlands in disaster risk reduction actions. The SDG, for example, SDG 6, 14, 15 call for protection, restoration, and sustainable use of water-related ecosystems. So the global policy arena has seen quite a favorable wind around wetlands. And I must say, India has also played a catalytic role at the global level to get the Ramsar Convention in place. This is a photograph taken of the Indian delegation signing the Ramsar Convention in 1971. It was only in 1982 at the behest of Honorable Prime Minister Srimati Indira Gandhi's that India finally ratified the convention. And this is the photograph of the first meeting of the Ramsar Convention. And at the front, you will see Honorable Salim Ali standing as a part of the delegation. He's a tall figure when we discuss people who have laid the foundation stones of wetland conservation in India. And at present, we have designated 75 wetlands to the list of wetlands of international importance under Ramsar Convention. As much as 8% of our known wetland regime is now under Ramsar Convention. That means we have made an express commitment of conservation and wise use of these systems. This is the largest network of Ramsar sites in South Asia, and in terms of country area, this area is equivalent to Bahamas. And in March 2023, government recognizing that now the size of Ramsar sites has become so big it demands a program, it launched Amrit Dharohar as a specific scheme for conservation of Ramsar sites. So there is a lot that is happening at the national policy scale. You must know that in 2017, wetlands conservation and management rules were enacted. And I will not go into the details of what these do, but most importantly, what these regulations do, they call for establishment of state and UT level wetland authorities. So no longer it is one institution at the central government which is responsible for wetlands. You now have entities within states responsible for knowledge and advisory functions, regulation function, notifying wetlands, telling what to do, what not to do, coordinating management plan implementation, and creating an enabling environment, awareness generation, convergence. So now you have institutions which can function at state level and UT level to conserve and wisely use wetlands. Beyond, several states have created institutional architectures below state level to enable wetlands conservation. For example, Tamil Nadu has district level wetland committees wherein different district level agencies can coordinate their actions and interventions around wetlands. Now, Indian policy environment has also created an enabling environment for wetlands conservation. For example, if I look at the additional, we have committed in our NDCs, and again, I'm aware that a new submission has been made, but we have committed that we will create additional carbon sink of 2.5 and 3 billion tons, and wetlands have a promising scope of supporting this target. India's mission Amrit Sarovar, which talks about developing and rejuvenating 75 water bodies in each district, is also calling for restoration and rehabilitation of wetlands. Our own SDG target 6.6 stated that by 2020 we'll protect and restore water-related ecosystems. Our National Wildlife Action Plan 2017-31 calls for establishment of National Wetlands Mission. The national biodiversity targets call for conserving ecologically representative areas covering 20% of the geographic areas. Our national disaster management plans calls for using wetlands as a non-structural approach for flood mitigation, and the Smart Cities mission commits itself to environment sustainability. And at the core of it, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, its own plan, which is called the National Plan for Conservation of Aquatic Ecosystems, has a mission to mainstream wetlands in development plans and programs at all levels. The message that the central government is giving, that wetland conservation is not just a species agenda, it needs to be aligned with development plans and programs at multiple levels. Yet challenges remain, and I have picked up some photographs from wetlands in urban areas. And distressingly, our practices around these wetlands make question our policy and programmatic commitment. For example, waste dumping continues in East Calcutta wetlands, around Guwahati, Deepar Beel, around Palikarni Marsh, and right now the city where I'm speaking, there is a beautiful wetland, and just besides the wetland is a waste dump. So it is a paradox. On one side, we call them wetlands. On the other side, we do everything to call them wastelands. Urban planning approaches seldom recognize the value of wetlands, and I've picked up this from a smart city plan from one of the prominent cities, and you will see how natural areas have been converted into cement. Cementing and concretizing wetlands is seen as beautification. Wetlands are lighted up as if they are structures, and this whole shows our lack of sensitivity and respect for the natural environment. We are even greening wetlands. For example, I was looking into the wetland data of the Gangetic floodplains in Uttar Pradesh, and I saw a massive reduction in wetland area between 2000 and 2020. And when I started looking into it, so on the left is the wetland area in 2000. So roughly 60% of it was converted into agriculture, which made sense to me because these are ephemeral wetlands, so agriculture has crept in. And a small portion was being built up, houses had come into these systems, but a significant area had been lost to terrestrial vegetation. And when I dug deeper, the mega plantation drives often end up planting upon wetlands. And wetlands, when you plant trees, especially terrestrial species, that means it acquires sediment, it creates a terrestrial environment, it hastens the decline of wetland ecosystems. So we are even ending up planting upon wetlands, greening wetlands, and again, that is a story that is being repeated in several places. And our majority of focus, conservation focus, when I look at where the Ramsar sites are being designated or government monies are being applied, these are mostly on wetlands which are already under some kind of a regulatory control, which is protected areas. So we are doing less of a service to wetlands located outside protected areas. And most of the times, we treat wetlands as what you said as water bodies. Now, how does wetland management look at wetlands management? For example, when we treat wetlands from a sectoral approach, for example, if we just treat from a water lens, we treat wetland as water body, we end up deepening but then that impacts ecology. For example, water birds. Now, different kind of water birds that use a wetland, they like a gradient of water level. So some birds, they like deep water levels. Some birds, they use the margins, shallow areas. Some birds wade. So now when we just treat wetland as a bucket of water, reservoir of water, we end up deepening them. We do not understand ecology. We no longer allow wetlands to be used as a suitable habitat. When we look at wetlands from a revenue perspective, try to create control, these are seldom aligned with dynamic regimes, because wetlands are where there is an interplay of land and water. So I am reminded of one beautiful Ramsar site in Bihar, Kabatal, wherein historically there was an agreement between the fishers and the farmers that when water is there, fishers will be allowed to fish. When the water moves out, the farmers will be given the rights to farm. But at no point in time will the wetland be altered. In Chilika, for example, where the fishermen, they used nothing less than 50 different types of gears to do fisheries in the wetland. And there was a diversity of ecosystems which the communities understood from their local and traditional knowledge. But when the government started making policies in 60s and 70s, they just recognized two forms of fisheries, capture or culture. And that is where the whole tussle of, culture, prawn fisheries and others started in Sri Lanka. When a tourism department, for example, looks at wetlands without recognizing the ecosystem, they convert wetlands only for aesthetic value. So concretization, mass tourism is done, which is harmful for ecosystems. So, and seldom when we look at the point that we are trying to make here is that wetlands are multifunctional ecosystems. They have multiple functions, and a single sectoral approach is going to be damaging or denigrating the other functions. For example, we can increase fisheries, but then that means it will become a different kind of wetland which will not be able to provide flood buffering function or water recharge function, or it might start attracting pollutants which are used in as chemicals in culture systems. So many examples tell us that it is time that a multi-sectoral approach to wetlands as their multifunctional systems is used. And thereby, Ramsar Convention talks about wise use. Now, what is wise use? Wise use is maintenance of ecological character or natural properties of the ecosystem. It is a form of use which does not alter the ecosystem. Now, unlike terrestrial areas, wetlands and several wetland types, they need some form of disturbance regime to maintain the vitality. Some kind of biomass harvesting is at a level much below the regeneration rates, is healthy for the ecosystem. Now, wise use permits human use of the wetland, provided the natural character, the natural property of the ecosystem is not maintained. And this can mean several things. It could mean that wetlands could be used strictly for species and habitats, which means that we close the wetland today and so that in future wetlands can be used. It could also mean that certain extractive uses of wetlands, such as taking water for irrigation, is possible without damaging the ecosystem. Or, for example, use of wetlands for meeting livelihood needs, food security, employment, recreation is possible, provided we do not alter the wetland or natural properties of the wetland. So, what becomes unwise use? Any use that reduces water flowing into the wetland. We reduce the area under inundation, we alter the natural shoreline, we fragment the wetland into small patches, reduce water holding capacity, deteriorate water quality, a reduction in diversity of native species, introduction or emergence of invasive species, or decline in wetland resources. So the line between wise and unwise use is a societal choice. But anything that alters the wetland becomes unwise, and it is our commitment to Ramsar Convention and in our policy documents that we will wisely use our wetlands so that their natural full range of ecosystem services, their ability to support diverse life forms is not compromised. Now let's talk about Mission Life. Mission Life is a program that nudges individual, and collective action towards lifestyle for environment. And it has components such as which are aimed at saving water, saving energy, healthy lifestyles, sustainable food systems, single-use plastic reduction, waste reduction, e-waste reduction. And you might question that how does Mission Life contribute to wise use of wetlands? And thereby I show you this. When we talk about wetland management, we are talking about two things. We are talking about providing an enabling condition for the ecosystem to function. That means it needs to be connected to the river and its coastal zone, natural connectivity. The species and habitats diversity needs to be maintained. The migration corridors, wetlands all along the migratory route for birds, or swimways that we call, wetlands being used by fish. They remain connected. The community around the wetland has a wetland positive behavior. That means it protects the system, it does not dump waste, and the livelihood interactions are sustainable. So one part of the action is to provide an enabling condition. The other part is we reduce threat on wetlands. The threats can be in the form of physical regime alteration, structural modification, introduction of invasive species, pollutants, or unsustainable extraction. We extract beyond the regenerative limit, or even local climate change impacts. So wise use, managing wetlands for wise use, we need to do two things. We either provide enabling condition, as well as we reduce threats on a wetland ecosystem. And when you look at both the frameworks, you will find a lot of connectivity. And these connections are direct and these connections are indirect. For example, saving water definitely allows for maintaining hydrological connectivity and maintaining hydrological regimes. Sustainable food systems would mean that the pressure on wetlands is reduced. So there is no component of Mission Life that does not directly or indirectly influence either the enabling condition or empower the community to reduce threats. Now, the core idea, Mission Life, is an all of society endeavor. It is meant that it is not just the duty of the government, but it is everybody's business to implement sustainable, adopt a lifestyle for environment. And thereby a question that emerges, how can a citizen work for wetlands conservation? And I always say that we can at least do 5 things. The first thing is we should become aware. The journey of any conservation starts with being aware. So first of all, let us be aware of where wetlands are in the neighborhood. Being aware of the legal status of wetlands. Are these notified under rules and regulation? Who manages? Being aware of the plans and programs. What is being implemented for wetlands? Being aware of the uniqueness and significance of the wetlands. So what is the species of, unique value that comes to my wetland? Is there any cultural history associated with wetlands? Being aware of the diversity of the wetlands, the species that inhabits the wetland. Being aware of the wetland functions. How does a wetland support the landscape, groundwater recharge, and even being aware of the governance system. Who's responsible for managing these systems? So the beginning of any engagement with wetland begins with our self-awareness. And from there, our second role becomes a watchdog. And this role has two dimensions. One is keeping a regular watch on wetlands. So what is happening around wetland? Are new species coming in? Are invasive species coming in? Is the water coming to the wetland? Is it changing? Is the water quality changing? The second role is keeping an eye on what is happening around wetlands. Is somebody dumping waste? Is some construction happening? Is the water channel coming to the wetland happening? And once we receive this information, we have to notify government agencies. We can put them an email, we can write a communication. So our role, the second role, is becoming a watchdog for the wetlands. The third important role is reducing footprints. Remember, wetlands are aquatic ecosystems. They are source of all water. And when we take efforts to reduce water consumption, it also reduces pressures on wetlands. When we reduce, pollution, it reduces pressure on wetlands from being used as a waste dump. For example, we should not promote consumption of commodities which are produced by degrading wetlands. For example, consuming shrimp which has been raised on farms that have been converted from mangroves. Not a good idea. When we buy houses, let's not buy houses or property inside wetlands or in their zone of influence. So there are certain decisions that we can take to reduce our footprint on wetlands. And then the third important area is we need to engage in wetland conservation actions. So how could we do that? We engage in wetland management planning. So suppose a wetland management planning is being done, we can offer our participation to the state governments or the nodal agency that we will take part in thinking process, go to the consultation meetings. We can create do's and don'ts for wetlands. So society, with so much of information being available, if we talk about our nearby wetlands, we can create our do's and don'ts that we will not permit any waste discharge, will not permit any construction activities, we will encourage research. So we can create do's and don'ts around wetlands. We can also participate in actions for species conservation. For example, a bird like Sarus crane. They build their nests on the ground. So we can protect those nests, or we can prevent any destruction of those nets. We can participate in, we can become a wetland mitra. For example, Wetland Mitra is a program of the central government where you can enroll as a wetland mitra and participate in wetland management. So, and you can participate in surveys. Wetlands International conducts Asian waterbird census, wherein volunteers and citizens can join hands to go and count birds in wetlands. And that record helps us maintain a track of population. Our fourth role is to build a constituency around wetlands. So that means we go and engage with panchayats and urban local bodies for inclusion of wetland conservation actions within their plans and programs. We can engage with our political representatives to ensure that wetland conservation actions figure in their development agendas. We can engage with district administration, so that wetlands become a part of district development plans, environment plans. We can engage with media. Today is a day of social media. We can write, opinion pieces or do positive tweets around wetlands. And we can, publish information, even photographs help. So we celebrate wetlands, the diversity of wetlands. We talk about wetlands. So we start building, not only, being an aware citizen, we can make others aware. So finally, I will conclude my talk by saying that wetland managers, and when I say managers, it is not just people who are trusted by the government, it is also us. We will play a crucial role in India's quest for sustainable development. Wise use is a central idea which needs to be adopted for wetlands, and especially development pathways which do not alter the ecological character. And management has to be adaptive. For example, wetlands are continuously changing. We need to be on alert, and as soon as new information comes in, we need to revise management. A critical role is played not just by science, but how governance and decision-making systems are organized around wetlands. So it is important to understand and invest into governance arrangements which can ensure wise use of wetlands. And interventions have to be aligned with ecological functioning. So anything that we do around wetlands has to be aligned with our knowledge of how wetlands function. So we have to invest in understanding wetland ecosystems, and then we have to ensure that when development projects like roads or water resources development projects, tourism projects come in, these ecosystem services are not compromised. Because as we move into dangerous domains with climate change coming in, with water insecurity becoming largely rooted, food insecurity become largely rooted, these ecosystems are going to be our line of defense. And if we compromise these lines of defense, it is not just the future, the fate of these ecosystems, even our fate is closely tied to these systems, and we are likely to be impacted. So that's where I will close, and over to Bharat for
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for sharing the valuable insights on wetlands and also the historical agreements made for the Ramsar Convention from the India side. So now I request participants, if there are any questions, we can interact with Dr. Ritesh Kumar. You can come here and speak to the professor.
Hello, my name is Latish. Yeah. Is there any business opportunity for investors in wetland conservation?
Quite a few, Dr. Satish. It's a very interesting question. So I was recently, I went to see the production facilities of Tata, and I spotted that they are actually investing a lot into wetlands conservation. So there are two ways. One is business processes. Uh, they use water, and wetlands become very closely associated with how water is made available or water is treated. So, a lot more opportunities. But you can also use wetlands to achieve sustainability goals or environmental sustainability goals at a corporate level. And that gives us a lot many models. Over at enterprise level, there are increasingly technologies that are used for water hyacinth removal or invasive species control. I recently saw an enterprise where the fiber from water hyacinth was used to produce saris and design material. So believe me, wetlands provide quite a bit of enterprise opportunities and corporate engagement opportunities.
Thank you.
So any other questions? Yes. Yeah. Please come. Please come.
So correct me if I'm going wrong. In Maharashtra, there is a place called Murur Janjira. It's a sea. Okay. Inside the sea, there is a fort. On that fort, there is a big well. But that it's a water body now. Okay. Now, if I would like to take I would like to participate and take an action to conserve that, because when the tourist goes there on that fort, they throw all plastic bottles, leftover things, and that it's just like a historical place, and that particular water body is a sweet water body. But now it is not conserved by government, or it is not conserved by the people, those who are working into that area also. Now my question is, if we conserve that now also, will it be possible to get the sweet water from that? And if I want to work towards that, what will be the initiative stage? What will be the stages I will have to start with?
Thank you for this interesting question. I've been to the site. Can I get your good name, please?
My name is Preeti Deshmukh, and I'm basically from Pune.
Namaskar, Preeti ji. So I've been to that area, and I think I can spot that well is there. There are two things. First of all, first line of action is to reduce pressure on that system. So no pollution, no debris deposit in the wetland. So the human adverse change that can be contained. Now, the time it takes for a wetland to become sweet, it is mostly dependent to the local geomorphology and the climate system. So the only point to have sweet water is through rains, right? In that system. So the balance between the rainfall and evapotranspiration will determine the water chemistry. And since it is located in a marine environment, in a sea environment, there is a lot of salt all around the system. So if the geology or geomorphology is altered to such an extent that salt and sweet have got mixed, it might need some intensive work. So it will need some detailed investigations, but first and foremost, things that can be done is allow as much as rainfall as possible to collect into that.
So water body is full. You know,
Yeah.
it's quite deep. It has been, you can say it must be a 200-year-old water body. That's a whale. There, it is built in the time period of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Okay, now if
Yes.
you go and touch the water body, you can actually touch the water body. That is the reason the people are throwing all plastic there and destroying the well. So that is what the question arises. Will it be possible to clean, and what will be the step as a environmental professional? What will be the step? You will guide me on that.
So the first thing is, human behavior around wetlands that is easily controllable. You can educate people that don't do this, the debris, and this is a seat water. So you can run a communications campaign around the value of these systems so that people realize. And then there is also, you can show them the fear of the law, that if you pollute, you will be fined, or, we are going against the established law of the country. Now, the question is, how much time does it take to convert it into a freshwater system, or will it be possible? It will need some detailed studies on how water moves into the system, the way it connects to the sea, the way it connects to the climate system. And after that, it will be possible to pinpoint whether it is possible or whether the system will possibly maintain itself in a brackish water condition. That requires some investigation around it. In certain points, in certain times, it is possible. In certain times, the ecosystem might have evolved into a different stage. We don't know. So it will need some systematic investigation. This is not very complex. Herein, what you can do is you can contact a couple of water resource modelers, people who model water, who can understand how water moves in an ecosystem, and they will be able to point you into the right direction. What is the future and what is the present of the system? I'll also share my email. I'll be more than happy to provide you any assistance from my organization to look into the condition of this matter.
It is not only the one condition in Pune city or around the fort of the Pune, because there are around 200 forts in and around Pune. Every fort has got a sweet water body. Okay. Now what happens in the monsoon season? Water get collected. The animals, the wild animals, those are there on the top of the fort. They are drinking water. That water, it means it's a potable water. So I mean, I as a layman's language, I can say that if when animals can drink, if it get treated or it get protected, even humans can use that. So that's the reason if we start something like start with a small initiative, it may be helpful for the future, and we can always work on it. Like that's what my I always try to look forward.
Start doing a simple water quality monitoring program. Do a seasonal monitoring, 4 seasons. Pick up some 4 or 5 parameters. You're sitting in Indian Institute of Science. Dr. TVRAMACHANDRA might be able to help you on this. Simple parameters, and do a good water quality monitoring and understand whether the water is really brackish or is it an assumption. Second, is it brackish around the year or is it for the parts of the year? So wetlands are transitional systems. Sometimes it will have one water quality in one part of the season, the other water quality in other parts. And based on that, you can do some simple catchment assessment of wetland, how much water is available, where is the salt coming from, and what are the treatment options. Yeah.
Great, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir. I have one doubt, sir. Sir, in one of the slides, you showed the Pallikarai marsh land, sir. Despite it being wetland of national importance, I'm not sure if you're able to see. This is the photograph that my friend took some 2 weeks back of this Pallikarai marsh site, sir. In the same road, the forest office is there, sir. But we are still seeing that it is still being used as a land dump site, sir. So what can we do about it, sir?
So the government in this case, so cities, so see these dump sites in a side wetland. Treating those is a complex problem. It takes some time to address this. I am aware that the Tamil Nadu State Wetland Authority is already taking proactive steps to contain dumping and to treat the not only the immediate waste but the legacy waste that is there. So I think we will have to engage with Tamil Nadu State Wetland Authority to understand their plans and programs. You can contact Mr. Deepak Srivastava, who is on the secretary there, and he will be more than happy to provide you the information. And then you can take it. So in this case, at least I found government of Tamil Nadu is pretty keen to address this problem. They recognize this. I've been into privy of certain discussions wherein Palaikarni March combination is being proactively discussed. So I hope in times to come you will get a better future of Palaikarni.
Thank you.
So looks like there are no questions. Now I request Dr. TVRAMACHANDRA sir to share his views.
Namaskar, Dr. Saab.
Namaskar, Ritesh. Nice to see you and hear you. So, what is the status of Agnashni?
We are trying to push it as much as we can. We will leave no stone unturned. It is my personal promise to you.
Okay.
The Ramsar proposal is under advanced stages of consideration. So I'm on it. I'll give you the good news as soon as I can.
Sure, because there were some queries. I responded to that.
Yeah.
It was forwarded to Chandan Singh by our colleague. Okay, sure. Then they told me that 2nd February it will be announced. So I was just wondering whether it has moved to that direction.
It has moved. The government is very much on it. But I'll be able to give you a firm date when I become privy of such date. But we are on it, Dr. Ramachandra.
Yeah, because even the local people are keen on that. Whenever I travel to that place, they keep asking me about the thing. So every time I keep telling, no, it will be soon. So
it is, I think we are seeing end in sight now of this. Your hard work of so many, I think, decades will now come to its logical conclusion.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you. So nice listening to you, and I'm sure our participants also are benefited. This is the 22nd session on course on environmental management. Last 3 years, it is also tagged to the GSTP program of the ministry. So on an average, about 20 to 25 people are graduated from this course every year. And these are all working professional, and few are youngsters, fresh graduates are also there. So who are keen on doing the work on wetlands. I'm sure your talk will benefit them, and it will motivate them to take up the study further. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
So thanks a lot for sharing your experiences as well as the knowledge with the participants. So on behalf of IISC, I wholeheartedly thanks for your efforts, sir. So and also I request all the participants to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you will get notified with our upcoming IISC webinars. So with this, I am concluding the session. Thank you so much. Okay, sir. Namaste.